Hey there, this is Brooke, bringing you a nutrition tip about macronutrients. How many times has someone asked you, do you want protein on your salad? Or how many times have you heard someone say, if I just look at carbs, they make me fat? I'd like to help you break out of the mentality of putting your food into one of three buckets. Instead of thinking, where should I get my protein? Or that has too many carbs, I want you to think about where your food came from. How much processing has occurred? Is it whole and full of vitamins and minerals? Or is it refined and stripped of so many important micronutrients? Well, what are carbs, proteins, and fats? They are the three sources of calories, or energy, that our body uses for daily functions. Would it surprise you to learn that whole foods have at least two, if not all three of those macronutrients? This chart shows you the recommended dietary allowances set by the USDA for proteins, carbs, and fats. You can use this as a starting point to compare it to the foods that you eat. But the first thing we should do is address carbs. How many of you think you got fat from eating too many carbs? Well, probably the foods you call carbs are delivering a health-hindering dose of fat. So let's not make carbs the victim. If you take a look at some pie charts, you'll see that potato chips have at least half of their calories from fat. Likewise, a donut, or tortilla chips, or French fries, or a cheese pizza. So, we need to consider the quality of our food. If we choose whole foods, they won't be filled with refined oils, as we see with potatoes when they're refined into chips or fries. A sweet potato is a great example of a whole food. Black beans are another great example. And oats. They can be steel cut, they could be old-fashioned rolled oats. Now let's address protein. Would you make a different choice if you found out that your protein source came in a bundle that included a whopping dose of saturated fat? Did you know the recommended daily intake of saturated fat is no more than 10% of your daily calories? And many people would put this number closer to zero. Well, what if you were at a restaurant and looked to order the filet mignon to get your protein? Did you know that almost half of its calories came from fat? And those fat calories are saturated because they came from animal flesh. Let's also look at chicken nuggets, a large dose of saturated fat, or a chicken sandwich. How about a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich on an English muffin? Almost half the calories are from fat. Or a hamburger, a meatball marinara sub. And what about that boneless, skinless chicken breast that we all thought had essentially no fat at all? It turns out that almost 25% of the calories come from saturated fat. And not surprisingly, if we look at the composition of bacon, we can see that 75% of the calories come from fat. Here's a look at whole milk, an egg, cheese, and chicken wings. Can you imagine a way to get your protein and minimize your fat intake at the same time? Well, you've seen that oats and beans have protein, but here's some more examples that may surprise. Broccoli has almost 25% of its calories coming from protein. And spinach, it has almost 39% of its calories from protein. So let's go back to one of the most basic questions. What does our body prefer to use for fuel to give us energy? So many diets try to trick the body into using suboptimal energy sources, creating conditions like ketosis. Does this seem like a good solution, short-term or long-term? Why not optimize the body's original design and let it function the way it was intended? Glucose, which is the product of the breakdown of carbohydrates, is the primary fuel source in the human body. And the following slides can show you some more great sources of this preferred macronutrient. We've got brown rice, quinoa, and chickpeas. So if we think about plant-based foods, which by the way are the foods that cows, bison, giraffe, horses, rhinos, hippos, elephants, some of the strongest animals on the planet eat, and we choose to eat them thinking about this power plate that's got fruits and grains and legumes and vegetables. This is a great way to get all three of our macronutrients without adding saturated fat to our diet. So instead of thinking, is this a protein, a carb, or a fat, let's ask, is this a fruit, or a grain, or a vegetable, or a legume? If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and feel free to add comments or questions below.